They called it a suicide mission. She called it a challenge. When Captain Sophia Langley volunteered to jump from 35,000 feet into a hurricane without a single piece of electronic equipment, her commanders laughed. But when she landed within inches of the target, the entire military would never look at storms the same way again. This isn't just a story about bravery. It's about revenge, legacy, and proving to the world that instinct can conquer even the fury of nature. Buckle up, because what you're about to witness isn't just history. It's retribution written in the clouds. The challenge hung in the air like the weight of a death sentence. Captain Sophia Langley stood still, unfazed, as Colonel Victor Maddox's laughter cut through the tension in the briefing room. 35,000 feet, no electronics, in a Category 4 storm, he scoffed. That's not courage, that's suicide. The room full of officers murmured uneasily. I'll put 50 grand down right now, Maddox added. She won't even make it through the first cloud layer. This was no ordinary military exercise. It was a halo jump, high altitude, low opening, performed in weather conditions that grounded entire squadrons. And she was going in without a single electronic device. No GPS, no altimeter, no radio, just raw instinct. A test that pitted human intuition against the wrath of nature itself. As the room buzzed with whispers, Sophia's eyes locked on Maddox's smug expression. This wasn't just a mission. It was about vindicating a legacy, the legacy of her father. Oakwood Air Force Base had never attempted anything of this magnitude. The highly classified Cerberus program existed to shatter limits, to take elite operators to places others wouldn't dare. But this bordered on madness. General Richard Baker, tall and severe with silver hair and steel blue eyes, raised his hand and the room fell silent. Project Cerberus was created to test the absolute limits of human ability. Captain Langley has volunteered. Colonel Maddox stepped forward, disbelief etched in every line of his weathered face. General, with all due respect, I've been executing Halo ops for 2 decades. What she's proposing is impossible. You can't manually calculate descent through that kind of storm. That's exactly why we must try, the general replied firmly. Sophia's voice rang out, clear and steady. The enemy doesn't wait for clear skies, sir. Every officer turned. At just 32 years old, Sophia had already earned a fearsome reputation, a tactical expert, a near-mythical parachutist. But even for her, this would be a jump beyond the documented edge of military possibility. The conditions are as they are, General Baker continued. Jump altitude, 35,000 feet. No electronic altimeter, no GPS, no radio. Target, 10-meter circle in the Nevada test range. Weather, non-negotiable. Maddox laughed again, sharp and mocking. The precision record for a halo jump is 15 meters, and that was in perfect conditions, with electronics. Records exist to be broken, Colonel, Sophia replied, flat and emotionless. The general gave a nod. Preparations start now. Jump window opens at 0200. Dismissed. As the officers filed out, Maddox shoved past Sophia, shoulder-checking her with deliberate force. Your father had the same arrogance, he muttered, and we both know where that got him. Sophia didn't flinch, but her jaw tensed. Her eyes stayed on him as he walked off, surrounded by officers who looked more like betters than comrades. Lieutenant Marco Rodriguez approached carefully. Captain, is this worth it? Everyone knows Maddox has been gunning for you since the academy. This isn't about him, she answered quietly. It's about what's possible. What Rodriguez didn't know, what no one really did, was that this mission had never been about prestige. It was about revenge. 8 years ago, her father, Master Sergeant David Langley, had died during a mission commanded by Maddox. A mission that failed because Maddox dismissed David Langley's weather warnings, ignored the one man who knew the storm like a second skin. As she walked to the equipment bay, Sophia's thoughts drifted. Memories of her father teaching her to read the clouds like a book, feeling air pressure changes in her skin, identifying shifts in wind by listening to the trees or the echo of her own footsteps. None of that was in the military manuals, and now it would be her only guide. Lightning flashed through the narrow aircraft windows, casting brief snapshots of the storm building outside. Inside the command center, every screen and every eye focused on the climbing aircraft. Globemaster is passing 15,000 feet, the air traffic controller reported. First storm layer ahead. On the central radar, the transponder's dot ascended slowly, now encircled in vivid reds and yellows as the aircraft plunged deeper into a swirling wall of chaos. General Baker stood with hands locked behind his back, his gaze stone cold. No reaction, not even a blink. ETA to jump altitude, 32 minutes, the operations officer added. If they survive this climb, someone murmured behind him, wait till you see what happens when Sophia jumps. A whisper rippled through the command center. The stakes were impossible, the odds absurd, but somewhere in that silence was a dangerous hope. Back inside the C-17, the turbulence worsened. At 25,000 feet, the cargo bay became a chamber of motion, equipment clanging against straps, crew gripping steel supports as the plane lurched in violent spasms. And yet, Sophia sat still. While others tensed, she breathed in rhythm with the storm. Even when a sharp drop caused momentary weightlessness, her eyes stayed closed. At her side, Lieutenant Rodriguez turned pale, gripping his seat for dear life. "How can you stay so calm?" he shouted over the engine's roar. "I'm not resisting the storm," she said softly. "I'm listening to it." The pilot's voice crackled through the intercom. "Passing through 28,000 feet, turbulence increasing. Mission abort remains on the table." Master Sergeant Jenkins made his way through the rocking bay towards Sophia. "Captain, the pilot recommends we turn back." "He's not here to decide," she said, eyes still closed. "He gets me to the altitude. I take care of the rest." Jenkins hesitated, then relayed the message. Moments later, the pilot's reply was grim. "Roger, continuing climb. This is officially the worst flight I've had in 15 years." At 30,000 feet, the plane jolted one last time. Then everything smoothed out. The aircraft had slipped into the eye of the storm, a rare hollow in the chaos, just as she expected. "Final check," Sophia instructed. Rodriguez went through her gear again. Suit seals intact, oxygen flow operational, parachute lines secured. Then came the final act, removing all electronic equipment. "I still don't understand why you're ditching everything," he said, gathering her GPS, altimeter, and radio. "Because Maddox believes it's impossible without them," she said, "and because my father taught me something better." From her suit pocket, she retrieved an old brass pocket watch. "This was his," she said, winding it. "It runs exactly 30 minutes. It's all I need." In the command center, the atmosphere thickened as the plane neared jump altitude. "Globemaster's holding steady at 35,000 feet, over drop zone," the air controller confirmed. On radar, a small clear pocket surrounded by a sea of red indicated the only moment of calm in an otherwise enraged sky. "Odds of jumper reaching target?" General Baker asked quietly. The lead meteorologist hesitated. "Based on current winds, sir, less than 2%, even with electronics." Colonel Maddox smirked. "And she's going in blind." Baker didn't turn. "Initiate jump sequence." Inside the plane, the warning lights blinked red, then green. The rear ramp began to lower. Cold, hurricane-strength winds screamed into the bay. Rain pelted the interior like steel pins. Sophia walked to the edge. "Captain," Jenkins shouted, "this is your last chance to reconsider." Sophia wound her watch, clipped it to her wrist, and reached beneath her collar. Her fingers found the small medallion, the one the old veteran had given her. She tapped it once, like a silent promise. "Green light in 30, Jenkins shouted. In the command center, everyone fell silent, all eyes on the screen. "Jumper at the ramp," the comms officer said. "Green light in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark!" Sophia stepped off the ramp and vanished into the storm. The silence that followed was absolute. "Jump logged at 0217 hours. The tracking officer whispered. "No electronic signature available." She was gone, swallowed by darkness, diving headfirst into fury, with only her instincts and a pocket watch to guide her descent. Sophia streamlined her body, bracing for the first collision with the wind. It hit like a freight train. Ice-cold air slammed against her suit. She tucked in tighter, minimizing drag. Lightning flashed above and below, illuminating the monstrous cloud she was plummeting through. 15 seconds in, her descent was smooth, still within the calm pocket. Then she hit the first storm layer. Chaos. Winds struck from multiple directions. Her body spun violently. Most would panic. Most would deploy early. Most wouldn't survive. But she wasn't most. Adjusting midair, she flattened herself against the wind. She became the weather vane, feeling each gust, leaning into it, aligning her form with the fury. In the command center, tension grew unbearable. "We should have seen her by now," someone muttered. "In this weather," another replied, "you'll be lucky to spot her parachute from 50 feet. Maddox checked his watch. 2 minutes. She's either deployed or... He trailed off. He didn't need to finish. "She's still falling," Baker said softly, "and she knows exactly where she is." At 30,000 feet above the desert, Sophia felt more alive than ever. The turbulence that disoriented others was her guide. Every jolt of pressure, every burst of air, each told her something. Wind from the northwest. Consistent. Fast. She shifted position, angling slightly east to correct her fall. A bolt of lightning cracked, giving her a glimpse of the lower cloud mass, striped and heavy with rain. One glimpse was all she needed. Her internal compass recalibrated. The watch ticked steadily. 1 minute 30 seconds. She estimated her altitude. 23,000 feet. Still high. Still falling fast. In the command center, helpless eyes watched unmoving screens. "This is insane," Colonel Wilkes said. "We have no visual, no signal. She could be anywhere." "She's probably miles off course," Maddox muttered. "Quiet," General Baker snapped. "Ground team, report conditions." "Base, this is Alpha Team. Visibility near zero. Wind gusts up to 55 knots. Still no sign of the jumper." "Maintain position," Baker ordered. "She'll be there." In the storm, Sophia dropped into the second layer. The rules changed instantly. Now vertical winds ripped through the sky, updrafts and downdrafts fighting each other with ferocity. She let herself be pulled into an updraft, using it to slow, to reposition, to think. The pressure against her body told her she was drifting too far east. She adjusted. Temperature dropped sharply. Her visor began to frost over. Static electricity danced across her suit as she passed through an electrically charged cloud. Her visibility was nearly gone, but she didn't need to see. She could feel. 2 minutes, 15 seconds. Estimated altitude, 15,000 feet. Everything was going to plan. Instead of fighting the crosswind, she welcomed it. Sophia shifted slightly, angling into the gust. She didn't resist. It wasn't about resistance. It was about harnessing the storm's power for precision. The ground was closing in, fast. 50 feet, 40, 30. She felt the wind build exactly as she predicted. Her timing was flawless. She pulled hard on the left steering toggle, easing the right. The parachute dipped and twisted, allowing the wind to guide her final approach. Then, perfectly timed, she flared the chute. The canopy surged upward, killing both her speed and forward motion in one synchronized move. Her boots touched down, soft, steady, silent, dead center in the glowing circle. The target. For a moment, she stood still, surrounded by darkness and hammering rain. The wind howled around her, but she didn't flinch. Her parachute fluttered to the ground like a silk ghost. Sophia calmly unfastened her harness, removed her helmet, and stood tall, expressionless, composed, victorious. The ground team, shocked into silence, watched the impossible unfold. Night vision cameras transmitted the surreal image back to the command center. There, too, no one spoke. Just stunned stares as the data confirmed what couldn't be real. Finally, the team leader's voice broke the silence. "Base, this is Alpha Team. Captain Langley has landed." A pause. "Distance from center, less than 1 meter. Repeat, less than 1 meter from the bullseye." Gasps rippled across the command center. The impossible was now undeniable. She had done it. Not only survived a halo jump into a Category 4 storm, without electronics, but landed with a precision never before recorded. General Baker turned slowly toward Maddox, whose face had gone pale. "Well, Colonel," he said coolly, It seems your wager didn't age well. Maddox said nothing. His eyes stayed glued to the screen, where Sophia stood, motionless in the storm's wrath, surrounded by the eerie green glow of chem lights. In the med bay, Sophia sat quietly while the flight surgeon conducted a full post-jump evaluation. Vitals? Normal. Heart rate? Resting. Oxygen saturation? Perfect. I don't understand this, the doctor muttered. You should be showing stress, elevated cortisol, hypoxia symptoms, something. I was ready, she replied evenly. No one's ready for what you just did. Before she could answer, Rodriguez burst into the room, face lit with a wide grin. Captain, no. Major Langley, they're calling it a world record. Less than a meter. In those conditions, no one's ever done anything like it. Sophia didn't smile. Not quite. Instead, she reached into her suit and pulled out the medallion, the one the old veteran had given her. It worked, she said simply. Rodriguez's grin faltered into confusion. Captain, you made history. She looked at him, calm and resolute. History is context, Lieutenant. I just did what I came here to do. Elsewhere on base, Colonel Maddox sat alone in his office, the bourbon glass in front of him untouched. The phone rang for the third time. He didn't pick up. He knew what it was about. $75,000. Gone. But that wasn't what made his hands shake. It was what he had seen. What shouldn't have been possible. Not without guidance systems. Not without fail-safes. And yet, David Langley's daughter had done it. There was a knock at his door. He didn't answer. It opened anyway. General Baker entered, formal as ever. Permission to speak, Colonel? He asked, though it was clearly rhetorical. Maddox stood. Of course, sir. Baker closed the door gently. I wanted a word before the official debriefing. If it's about the betting pool... It's not, Baker said calmly. We'll deal with that through formal channels. This is about Kazakhstan. The name struck like a punch. Maddox slowly sank back into his chair. I don't understand, sir. I think you do, Baker said, walking to the window. 8 years ago, Operation Sandstorm. You were in command. David Langley warned you, advised against the mission. He predicted catastrophic weather. The intel was time-sensitive, Maddox replied almost by reflex. We had a narrow window. You overruled him, Baker said, voice low. Pushed ahead, and the storm hit, exactly as he said it would. 4 men dead, including Langley. Maddox sat still, the color draining from his face. The official report blamed equipment failure, Baker continued. I signed off on that report. I shouldn't have. A silence lingered. She approached me 3 months ago, Baker added. Said she wanted to prove what her father always knew, that storms can be read by those who listen. He turned toward Maddox. She didn't want to destroy you, Colonel. She wanted the truth to win. Maddox's voice was hollow. So this was planned. No, Baker corrected. You planned your own downfall. The betting, the ridicule. You gave her all the rope. She just let you tie the knot. What happens now? You attend the debriefing, you show respect, and you pay your debts. She has plans for that money. Then Baker walked out. Maddox remained frozen. Outside, the storm began to clear. In the locker room, Sophia stood alone, her dress uniform crisp, her hair neatly tied back. She held the medallion in her hand, running her thumb over the weather markings etched into its surface. A memory surfaced, her father's voice teaching her how to feel air pressure through her skin. Nature speaks, he used to say. You just have to listen. The door opened. Major Curtis stepped in and paused when he saw her. Didn't mean to interrupt. It's fine, she said. You gave Rodriguez your father's recordings. The flash drive. Curtis nodded. I thought it was time. You needed the full picture. Did you know what Baker had planned? Not the detail, he admitted, but I knew this wasn't about just breaking records. A pause. Your father was the best meteorologist I ever served with, Curtis added. Kazakhstan was wrong. Sophia finally allowed herself a faint smile. He'd have appreciated the show. Curtis chuckled. Must run in the family. He checked his watch. Debriefing starts in 15. Ready to make it official? She nodded, pocketed the medallion, and stood. I've been ready for 8 years. The base auditorium buzzed like a beehive. Word of Sophia Langley's impossible jump had traveled faster than protocol could contain it. Inside, the room was standing room only. Officers and enlisted personnel packed the aisles and filled every corner. No one wanted to miss this. On the screen behind the podium, storm data and grainy night vision footage played on loop. Her eerie descent, her boots touching down in the dead center of the target zone. It already had a name among the ranks, the Ghost Drop. General Baker stood at the front, flanked by senior officers. Among them, sitting bolt upright in the front row, was Colonel Maddox, his face locked in a mask of professional stoicism. When Sophia entered, the chatter halted. Applause erupted, first hesitant, then thunderous. She walked calmly through the noise, her expression unchanged. She acknowledged the reception with a simple nod before standing beside General Baker. He raised his hand for silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "what we witnessed yesterday redefines the boundaries of special operations." He motioned to the screen behind him. Captain Langley jumped from 35,000 feet into a Category 4 storm with no electronics and landed, by instinct, less than a meter from her target. That is not just unprecedented, it's revolutionary. On the screen, data compared her performance with the previous Halo precision record. 4.5 meters in perfect conditions. Hers, 0.67 meters in a hurricane. The room rippled with disbelief. She will now brief you on her method. I suggest you take notes. Baker stepped aside. Sophia took his place at the podium. "Thank you, General." Her voice was calm, her tone surgical. "What I accomplished yesterday was not about talent. It was about training, about principles, and about the legacy of someone who understood weather better than any system we built." She nodded to the tech officer, who brought up a detailed storm map. The system had 3 layers, each with distinct wind behavior. I studied those layers for days. I mapped the storm in my head, not just with data, but with instinct, and I used that instinct to navigate in total darkness. She described how she felt air pressure through her suit, how she recognized altitude changes through temperature shifts and body compression. Her senses had become her instruments. Most in the room sat frozen, absorbing every word. Even Maddox leaned forward, eyes narrowed, absorbing knowledge he once scoffed at. "This technique wasn't mine," she said. "It was my father's, Master Sergeant David Langley. His research laid the foundation for what I demonstrated yesterday." At the mention of her father, the mood shifted. A hush of recognition moved through the crowd. Some officers exchanged uneasy glances. Some lowered their eyes. Colonel Maddox's jaw visibly clenched. "In conclusion," she said, "we can no longer say storms are unknowable. With the right training, with the right mindset, our forces can operate even when all technology fails." She stepped back. The room exploded in applause. General Baker returned to the podium. "Captain Langley, your actions have permanently changed the landscape of military operations. In recognition, I am authorized to present you with the Airman's Medal for voluntary risk of life in an act of heroism." He opened a wooden box and pinned the medal onto her chest as cameras flashed. "And furthermore," he said, unfolding a second document, "effective immediately, Captain Sophia Langley is promoted to the rank of Major." A gasp swept the room. Sophia's captain insignia was replaced with the gold oak leaves of a major. The applause that followed was thunderous. Baker leaned in, his voice low. "Your father would be proud." As the ceremony wound down, officers lined up to shake her hand, to say something, anything, to the woman who had just redefined what was possible. Colonel Maddox remained seated, unmoving. Finally, when the crowd had thinned, Baker approached him quietly. "Colonel," he said, "I believe you have something to say." Maddox stood stiffly. Slowly, he walked toward Sophia. "Major Langley," he said, extending a hand. "Congratulations." She shook it coolly. "Thank you, Colonel. If I may speak with you, in private." She nodded, and the junior officers nearby respectfully stepped back. "You planned this," Maddox said, his voice carefully controlled. "I planned to survive the jump," she replied evenly. "The rest was your doing. The betting pool was mine." he admitted. Your success proves something I wasn't ready to face. She said nothing. The techniques you used, your father tried to show them to me. I ignored him. Yes, you did. Maddox hesitated. I have a check. 75,000. Yours. I don't want it, she said. It's not just from me. Everyone who bet against you owes a share. Then establish a scholarship, in my father's name, for meteorology students. A pause. Maddox nodded. Done. He turned to leave. Then she spoke again. Colonel, he told you the storm would hit at exactly 0300 hours, didn't he? Maddox froze. How do you know that? Because I have the recording. His final weather briefing. The color drained from his face. And yet, you didn't release it. That wasn't the point, she said quietly. I wasn't trying to destroy you, Colonel. I wanted the truth recognized. Maddox looked at her differently now. You're not like him, he said. He would have used that recording. She gave him a faint smile. You didn't know him as well as you thought. We both believe that actions speak louder than words. She used a Category 5 typhoon, Baker murmured, still processing what had just happened. As a delivery system, his voice was hushed, less awe, more reverence. She made the impossible operational, Rodriguez added. Baker nodded. Her father would have been proud. And somewhere in Colorado, I think Colonel Maddox might have finally found peace. 3 weeks later, Oakwood Air Force Base had settled back into routine. The noise of history-making had faded into whispers. Officially, Sophia Langley's legendary halo jump had been classified. Unofficially, it was the stuff of myth, passed in murmurs through the ranks. But what followed, the mission through the heart of a Pacific typhoon, was a ghost story only a handful knew was real. A success so critical, it was buried under layers of national secrecy. On a crisp autumn morning, Sophia walked across the parade grounds, her uniform pressed, her gold oak leaf insignia catching the sunlight. She wasn't headed to the command center. She had chosen a different destination, the memorial garden behind the chapel, quiet, solitary, sacred. She walked with purpose toward the far end, where a name carved into polished stone waited for her. Master Sergeant David Langley. And she wasn't alone. A single figure stood there in dress blues, rigid posture, hands behind his back. Colonel Victor Maddox. He turned when he heard her approach. Major, he greeted, his voice more human than she'd ever heard it. Colonel, she replied, nodding once. Thank you for meeting me before my reassignment. They stood side by side in silence for several seconds, both gazing at the name that had connected and divided them for 8 long years. Your typhoon drop? Maddox finally spoke, his voice quieter. The intel package saved lives, and the wind shear data I sent was precise, she said. Without it, I might not have made it. He nodded slowly. I should have trusted your father 8 years ago, but I trust him now. I saw what he was trying to show me, and you brought it to life. Sophia turned to face him. What will you do at Peterson? They've assigned me to develop a predictive model for special ops meteorology, he said, using your father's algorithms. General Winters has given full clearance. His methods will finally be codified, studied, taught. Sophia gave a small, grateful nod. He always said his knowledge shouldn't die with him. It needed to be passed on. Maddox reached into his coat and pulled out a small, worn box. I've kept this for 8 years, he said, offering it to her. It was recovered with his effects in Kazakhstan. I studied it obsessively. I should have returned it long ago. She opened it gently. Inside lay a weathered leather notebook. Her father's handwriting scrawled across every page. Charts, pressure diagrams, margin notes. Formulas made from feel, not machines. It was priceless. Her throat tightened as she ran her hand across the cover. Thank you, she said softly, voice strained. They walked slowly back toward the main building together. Maddox cleared his throat. Will you take the position, the training division? Yes, she replied. The Extreme Environment Navigation School begins next month. First class, 12 candidates. The legacy starts now. They couldn't have chosen better, he said. He paused, then added, I submitted a corrected report. On Kazakhstan. The record now reflects that I ignored accurate meteorological guidance. The failure was mine. Sophia stopped in her tracks, genuinely surprised. You know that could end your career. Maddox looked straight ahead. It should. Accountability matters, even if it's late. On the chapel steps, General Baker waited. A crowd was gathering inside the auditorium. The first David Langley Memorial Scholarship was about to be awarded. Will you stay for the ceremony? Sophia asked. Maddox shook his head. My flight leaves in an hour, but I'm glad the money will go to something worthy. He gave her one final nod. $75,000 for future weather specialists. Your father would appreciate the irony. He turned to go, but she called out, Colonel, before you go, the Typhoon mission, how did you know? He looked over his shoulder. I didn't have the details, he admitted, but I saw the urgency. The quadrant they had me analyze, the secrecy, the intensity. I recognized the pattern, and I knew there was only one person crazy enough to jump into a typhoon. He gave a faint smile. Or properly trained. She raised an eyebrow. Both, he agreed, just like your father. That afternoon, the auditorium filled with young cadets, mid-career officers, and senior brass. Sophia stood beside General Baker as the first recipient of the David Langley Memorial Scholarship for Meteorological Excellence stepped on stage. A bright-eyed airman with a passion for weather patterns and a dream of saving lives. Before handing over the certificate, Baker leaned toward Sophia. The Pentagon confirmed this morning. Operation Nightfall is being hailed a complete success. Sophia nodded, calm as always. They also fast-tracked your school, Baker continued. What you've proven has changed everything. They're calling it a paradigm shift. He was right, she said. My father. He always believed this could save lives when tech fails. And now his legacy lives through you, Baker said. Speaking of which, there's one more update. Maddox's corrected report on Kazakhstan. It's been accepted. Your father's reputation is officially restored. She closed her eyes for a second. The weight of 8 years lifted in silence. When it came time to speak, Sophia addressed the audience not as a war hero, not as a record breaker, but as a daughter. Nature speaks to those who listen, she said. My father taught me that. When everyone else heard noise, he heard a language, a code in the chaos. She looked out at the sea of uniforms. And now we'll teach that language to others. So when the storm comes and the machines fail, we'll still find our way home. Her hand rested lightly on the pocket of her uniform. Inside was the journal, and with it, a legacy finally vindicated. This story lit a fire in your soul. If watching Sophia Langley defy the odds, honor her father's legacy, and change the rules of modern warfare gave you chills, then hit that subscribe button right now. Tap the bell icon so you don't miss a single second of this incredible journey. This military epic will be released in 6 powerful parts, each one packed with emotion, action, and revelations. Part 1 drops soon, and the rest will follow, one episode at a time. Leave a comment below. Would you have jumped into the storm like Sophia, or walked away? Remember, heroes aren't born, they're forged in storms.